The beloved US men's national team Camp Cupcake. The one camp we have every year that is essentially composed of MLS players. In the past, it made total sense, as a big portion of the United States' roster was based in Major League Soccer. But nowadays, our best players are playing in Europe. So this camp has become completely useless. Right? Wrong. It can still be useful, and I will be talking about that throughout the video. Even though today, what we are going to be mainly doing and focusing on is what Mauricio Pochettino will do. What will his roster look like? Hello. If you are new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to our 2025 US Men's National Team Camp Cupcake Roster Prediction video. But before we start, here are a few things that you must know. The US Men's National Team Camp Cupcake roster will play Venezuela January 18th in Miami, Florida. Then on January 22nd, they will face Costa Rica in Orlando. And technically, these are not bad opponents, right? Venezuela is much better than they once were, and Costa Rica is always tough. But here's the thing. This is not a FIFA international window, which means clubs are not obligated to release their players, which makes it more likely that we're going to see an MLS-based roster for the United States. We're going to see that. And we're going to see maybe a domestic roster for Costa Rica and a domestic league roster for Venezuela. These are not good teams. And my point here is any good performance from any American player should be taken with a grain of salt. Not ignored. A good performance does, in fact, matter. But please take it with a grain of salt and don't overhype anyone that scores, if we score, right, against Venezuela's domestic league team. So as I said, this is not during a FIFA international window. We're probably going to get a US men's national team roster with MLS players because it will be during their off season, and I believe Liga MX will also be during their off season, so we're going to see players from both of those leagues. This is also Pochettino's very first Camp Cupcake, so I will be doing my best. It's going to be a calculated guess of who he will bring. And I'm going to also assume it's a 23-man roster. Now, if Pochettino does bring a bunch of MLS veterans, this camp will be a complete waste of time. Just an MLS promotional tour that doesn't really help the league at all. But if he brings a ton of prospects and mixes them with a few veterans, it can be a very useful camp for the US men's national team and for US soccer as a whole. So what will he do? I don't know. We're going to find out in a few weeks. Today, we're just going to try to predict that. And if you haven't already, make sure to drop a like in this video. Let's try to hit 800, 900 likes. If you don't hit the like button until the end of this video, you have by the end of this video to hit the like button, then you are a loser. So do that right now because the clock is ticking, and it's ticking against you. All right, 23-man roster, and we're going to start the goalkeepers. And I believe Pochettino will bring 3 goalkeepers into camp. And this one's actually pretty easy to me. Based on Pochettino's previous rosters, I think he's going to bring in Patrick Schulte from the Columbus Crew, which in my opinion is a good pick. He's even fighting for a spot in our A roster, so it makes total sense, and he's still fairly young. The other goalkeeper is a promising young goalkeeper from Barcelona B, the 18-year-old Diego Cochin, which to me is another good choice. Lastly, I think he's going to bring Zach Steffen from the Colorado Rapids. Personally, Matt Freese from the New York City FC probably deserves it more, but I think we're going to get Zach Steffen in this camp. This is a good camp to, give Diego Cochin a game, and then the other game, just give it to Patrick Schulte, in my opinion. So just to recap, it's going to be Patrick Schulte from the Columbus Crew, Diego Cochin from Barcelona B, and Zach Steffen from the Colorado Rapids. Next up, we have the fullbacks, and I believe he's going to bring 4 of them. Okay, so fullbacks. This is honestly a position that for this camp, we don't really have much to gain from. He could give a 16-year-old Peyton Miller from the New England Revolution a shot, but he's far from being ready. And, even though he's talented, I don't know if he's ever going to be USMNT quality. So I believe we're going to get names here that we are already familiar with, and Pochettino might want to get familiar with himself. One of them being John Token, the left back that at the time of this recording, he's still a New York Red Bulls player. But if he leaves in January, he could miss Camp Cupcake. He made the MLS Cup final with the Red Bulls. He is among the best left backs in MLS, and he was our starting left back in the Olympics. The other fullback is the starting right back from the Olympics also, the 23-year-old right back, Nathan Harrio from the Philadelphia Union. Then I believe he's going to bring the versatile fullback also that plays for the Columbus Crew, DeJuan Jones. I know he played as a wingback, wide midfielder, right back, left back, even center back. The dude is kinky. He plays every single position. He goes through more positions in 90 minutes than a horny couple after a glass of red wine. And DeJuan Jones is a decent player, but I don't think he's ever going to be good enough for the US men's national team's A roster. Now the fourth fullback, I don't know, man. He either brings Peyton Miller, a young promising prospect, or Shaq Moore, a veteran that looked like an amateur player in the World Cup. I want to believe he's going to bring a prospect, but I gotta be real here and brace yourselves. I think we're gonna get Shaq Moore back. So just to recap, the 4 fullbacks I think he's gonna bring will be John Tolkin from the New York Red Bulls, Nathan Harrio from the Philadelphia Union, DeJuan Jones from the Columbus Crew, and Shaquille Moore from Nashville. Next on the list, we have the center backs, and I believe Pochettino will bring 4 center backs into camp. Okay, so 2 center backs to me are locks, and Pochettino will call them in. I mean, they were even in the first 2 rosters that Pochettino brought in, the A rosters, and they were also in promotional posts for these games of the US Men's National Team Camp Cupcake, for whatever that's worth. And they are Tim Ream from Charlotte FC and Miles Robinson from FC Cincinnati. I think both of them will be there as long as they are healthy. Now, I do think he's going to bring 1 young center back out of those 4. And the options would be maybe Jalen Neal, the backup center back for the MLS Cup champs, the LA Galaxy. Another option is the 17-year-old center back from Augsburg B, Noah Kai Banks. I could also see him bringing Mattia Kimboni. He's a good young option, but I doubt it. I think Josh Winder from Benfica B might be ahead of Mattia Kimboni as well. But Noah Kai Banks from Augsburg B will be my guess. He's a very talented ball-playing defender, has a ton of potential, and I could see Pochettino wanting to give a close look to Noah Kai Banks here. Now, the 4th center back is probably going to be Jackson Ragan from the Seattle Sounders. One of the best center backs in MLS, again, for whatever that's worth. But Jackson is 26, so I don't know how much better he can still get. But this guy had a really good season, and he's a really big guy. The dude is like 6'6". I'm okay with him being here personally. I also think he might be better than Miles Robinson these days, and definitely better than Walker Zimmerman, but I think he'll be the 4th center back. So let's recap. I think the 4th center backs that he's going to bring will be Tim Ream from Charlotte FC, Miles Robinson from FC Cincinnati, Noah Kai Banks from Augsburg B, and Jackson Ragan from the Seattle Sounders. Now, if he does not go with Noah Kai Banks, then maybe we'll see Jalen Neal there, or, unfortunately, Walker Zimmerman from Nashville. But at the end of the day, we should all be thankful that the Aaron Long era is done. I think there's like close to a 0% chance that we're going to see Aaron Long in this roster. I hope I don't jinx that, but I don't think we're going to see him there. Now, with that said, before we continue, we're going to put a quick word from the sponsor of this video, So Rare. We'll be back in 60 seconds. And here's a fun fact. I know I just kind of crapped on Walker Zimmerman, but I did buy his So Rare card for 70 cents. It was really cheap, so I was just like, might as well. The guy plays a lot in MLS. Why not? Okay, quick word from our sponsor. We'll be back very soon. Do you collect sports cards? Do you play fantasy sports? Yes, no, maybe. If you said yes to any of that, I got something for you. And if you said no, you might still want to stick around. Tactical Manager TV is partnering up with SoRare with a special offer. The link will be in the description. In SoRare, you can collect your own virtual cards of your favorite players. And then you may be asking, why would I want to collect virtual cards? Well, you can line them up on 5-a-side games every single week. And if your players perform in real life, you can win actual money, signed jerseys, game tickets, or even more cards to improve your own club. And you can also get unique experiences like a friend of the channel, Fiago, that got to meet Zinedine Zidane. You know what's also cool? They also have the NBA and Major League Baseball. I'm mainly gonna just stick to soccer, but you do you. What I really like about SoRare before we even partnered with them is that they're unlike other fantasy games where you have to pay per play. In SoRare, you pay to get the players you want permanently as cards. And then you can play multiple times using those same cards, at least until the player retires, win rewards if your players perform in real life. You can also buy undervalued player cards for cheap, then hold, use them in the future when they improve or develop, and then you can even sell that card when its value goes up for better ones. or just keep the money yourself. And if you use the link in the description of this video, you will get $50 in credit after buying your first 5 cards through auctions or instant buy at any prices. Play with responsibility. All right, enjoy. Okay, next up we have the midfielders, and I believe Pochettino will bring 6 midfielders for the January camp. And this is the section of the field where I think Mauricio Pochettino will have younger players over the older ones, much different from the center backs and fullback positions that I talked about. So there are 5 players in this section from MLS, and 1 that I expect to be there that is not in Major League Soccer right now. The 5 players that are in MLS at the time of this recording are Diego Luna from Real Salt Lake, Jack McGlynn from the Philadelphia Union, Danny Edelman from the New York Red Bulls, Ben Kremaski from Inter Miami, and Georgi Mihailovic from the Colorado Rapids. I guess Tim Tillman from LAFC might be an option, but I don't know. I think he will only make this camp if one of the players I mentioned previously goes to Europe in January, and then there's an extra spot because that player wouldn't be available. Personally, I don't see any of the players I mentioned breaking through the USMNT A squad anytime soon, if ever. Mihailovic probably won't ever. I would say the 2 that I give the highest odds would be Diego Luna and Jack McGlynn. But the US men's national team has a ton of depth in the midfield, so it's good that we're going to see younger players this camp, at least for the midfield. But I'm also not overly excited about it. Now, the 6th midfielder I think he might bring is Diego Cochin's teammate, Pedro Soma, a very talented central defensive midfielder from Barcelona B that has actually looked quite good while playing for our youth teams. In my opinion, Pedro Soma could actually be a USMNT A-team player in the future. The potential is there, but obviously he still has a ton to develop. That would be a name, however, that I would love to see this camp. And I think that Pochettino might actually bring him. There's a slight chance that will happen. But before we continue, let's quickly recap the 6 midfielders that I just mentioned. And they are Diego Luna from RSL, Jack McGlynn from the Philadelphia Union, Danny Edelman from the New York Red Bulls, Ben Kremaski from Inter Miami, which I talked about Ben Kremaski before. I think he has potential to be a good MLS player, but I don't rate him very highly in terms of going to a big European club or even playing for the US men's national team's A-team. The 5th player would be Georgi Mihailovic from the Colorado Rapids, and the 6th player would be Pedro Soma from Barcelona B. All right, we've reached the wingers, and I believe Pochettino will bring 4 wingers for the January camp. But before we continue, I'm going to ask you once again to drop a like in the video. It helps us quite a bit, and it's free. And I have a question for you. Give me in the comment section 3 to 5 prospects that you would like to see this January camp. 3 to 5 prospects, realistic ones that can actually make the roster. Don't say a player that's like Paxton Aronson, for example. Utrecht won't release him, okay? Let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so for the winger position, I'm actually interested in one player that I'm about to mention very soon, the last one specifically. But first and foremost, I think Alejandro Zendejas, who plays for Club America and literally just won Liga MX with them, will be there. He has already been in camp with Pochettino, and I expect him to be there once again. I also think he's going to bring in Cade Cowell from Chivas. Cowell has been in camp with Pochettino before, and I don't see why he wouldn't bring him in again. But those 2 players I'm not very interested in watching. We know what Alejandro Zendejas and Cade Cowell can offer and what they cannot offer, so I'm not overly excited or interested in watching them this camp. But another name that I think will make it is Quinn Sullivan. Not Kevin Sullivan, but his older brother, Quinn. Quinn is still 20, and he did give 5 goals and 8 assists for Philadelphia Union this season in MLS. I don't rate him as high as Kevin Sullivan in terms of a prospect, in terms of potential, but I don't think calling up Quinn Sullivan for the January camp is a bad call-up. I think it's a good call-up. I'm interested in seeing what he can do with the US men's national team. But the 4th winger is the one I'm about to mention. I'm actually very interested in watching him and seeing how he does this camp if he gets called in. And that's Cole Campbell. He got a few minutes here and there with Dortmund this season when they had an injury crisis on the wing, and he looked fine, making his Bundesliga debut as a teenager, just like Christian Pulisic and Giovanni Reina. Once their main guys returned to Borussia Dortmund, he went back to their B team, and that's where he currently is. So I think that Dortmund would release Cole Campbell for this camp. He's just 18. He has a very high ceiling as a winger. If Pochettino calls him up, which I think he might, he will most certainly be one to watch. So just to recap, the 4 wingers that I think he's going to bring will be Alejandro Zendejas from Club America, Cade Cowell from Chivas, Quinn Sullivan from the Philadelphia Union, and Cole Campbell from Borussia Dortmund. Last but not least, we have the center forwards, and I think Pochettino will bring 2 of them. So this one, when you take into account MLS and Liga MX players, we are not left with many options. No, seriously, think about it for a second. It's between Brendan Vasquez from Monterrey, Jesus Ferreira from the Seattle Sounders, former FC Dallas. At least I think at the time of this recording, I think it's a done deal. At least there were reports that he was heading to Seattle. And then we also have, I don't know, Duncan McGuire, that is a very mediocre player, and he's been super mid for Orlando City. So seriously, who else, right? We can't include the players in Europe. When you look just in MLS and you look also in Liga MX, these are the American attackers we have. So my guess is that Brendan Vasquez makes it. He's been called in by Pochettino before, and honestly, out of the 3 players I mentioned, Brendan Vasquez is probably the best player. And then Jesus Ferreira will probably make his return to the US Men's National Team this camp, as long as he wants to be there. A return that no one wanted, but we're going to get it anyway. So once again, Brendan Vasquez from Monterrey and Jesus Ferreira, which I believe the Seattle Sounders deal is a done deal at this point, they will be the center forwards for the January camp, I think. I do think that maybe Julian Hall, the 16-year-old from the New York Red Bulls, would be an interesting option. He can play on the wing. He can play as a center forward. He's very talented. It would be more interesting to bring him, but I think Pochettino will go with Vasquez and Jesus. Okay, so just to conclude this video, one thing you might have noticed by now, most of you should have, is that the best players in MLS these days are not American. Okay, the best players in MLS are not American. Our best players went to Europe, even the prospects. So the roster, the overall roster is very weak with a few interesting names here and there. It could be a useful camp if Pochettino is able to bring in some of these young names that I mentioned throughout the video. Outside of that, a lot of the veterans, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever. We're going to be doing live watch-alongs for these games. We're going to be covering it, but it's not a camp that I get overly excited about. All right, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go. And obviously in the comment section, let me know 3 to 5 prospects that you want to see this camp. It can even be names that I mentioned. All right, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.